Cullen. After how many letters, I don't expect you to answer. I'm not even sure you'll read this, but maybe you will, and I don't think it will help, but I want you to read it all the same. This isn't the first time you've disappeared on me, and I'm no less stubborn. When you're ready to come back, I'll be here for you. Love always, Mia. Welcome, patrons. I always find the fan reactions to Cullen strange. Most seem to either place him in the boring Disney Prince box or the problematic asshole box, with few others in between. I'm not saying you have to like Cullen or you have to go rewrite your smutty fanfics, but at least have a decent understanding of the actual character. Childhood. Cullen Stanton Rutherford was born roughly around 9/11 Dragon. We don't know the exact date, but he is around 19 in Origins and 30 in Inquisition. He lived in Honolith most of his life and was the second oldest of 4, his elder sister being Mia, the third being his brother Branson, and the youngest Rosalie. Mia would end up being one of Cullen's greatest supporters in both his childhood and his adult life. He played often with his siblings at things like chess and pretending they were Templars, with young Rosalie having to be the dangerous apostate. At only 8 years old, Cullen would declare to his siblings that he would become a Templar when he grew up, and he soon started to visit the local chantry and asking questions from the Templars. Honolith was a really small town. They didn't have very many Templars, but those that were there answered anything he asked and began to train him in basic swordplay. When he was only 13 years old, a knight captain ended up visiting Honolith and took notice of Cullen's dedications. He would end up offering Cullen the chance for formal training. Cullen's parents would agree, wanting to give their son his dream job, and so he left his family to go study. His brother Branson, on the day he left, would give him a golden coin, saying that it's for luck, despite Templars not believing in such sentimental gifts, as their faith should hold them strong. It's the only thing he would keep from his childhood. Even at that age, Cullen was considered an older recruit, but he just loved the studies he was given so much he just quickly caught up with the other children. Eventually, Cullen took the final vows at age 18 and was assigned to Kinloch Hold. Dragon Age Origins. When DAO starts, Cullen has been a Templar for almost a year. Just a quick aside, it is hinted in Dragon Age Origins that all of the wardens in all of the Origins do exist, even if you don't play as them. So even if you didn't play as a mage, Cullen was still tasked to watch the harrowing of both/either the could-be warden Amel or Serana, and be the one to make the killing blow if they failed. If you didn't play as a mage, we don't know the fates of Amel or Serana, so I can't say if Cullen had to strike either of them down after a failed harrowing. But if you do play a mage, you can meet Cullen in the opening. A male mage is just greeted very politely, while the female mage has a much different experience. The crush. Even after you wake up, you can overhear 2 gossiping mages talk about Cullen's crush on you, and it becomes even more apparent when talking to him. But if you confront him about it, he literally ends up running away from you. Despite his feelings, Cullen knows that the relationship is inappropriate. Another thing I want to get across is how hard Cullen fell for the female mage warden. Even 10 years later, he still thinks of her, but I don't think it's the same way. And this has led to a lot of people feeling uncomfortable about his feelings for her. And here's the thing, I don't think it's undeserved, but I do think it's misplaced. A lot of people have experience with creepy stalker types. The ones who have a fondness for you and won't take no for an answer, the ones who stare, give unwanted gifts, and try to emotionally bully you into a relationship. A lot of people have assumed this onto Cullen. But he has done none of that, and he has done nothing to deserve this reputation. I honestly think that Cullen's crush was just an innocent one that would have quickly faded had the trauma never happened. When the Blood Mages used her form against him, this crush now took on a new meaning. It was a part of the trauma. Along with that, Cullen later expressed how wrong he was when talking to the Mage Warden again, and how he wishes that she knew that he was sorry for the things he said. He wasn't in the right state of mind, which is exactly what some of your companions say when you talk to Cullen. Then, the Blight hits. Cullen stays mostly in Kinloch Hold for the entire time and never truly sees any part of the Blight. His family flees from Honolith, which was overrun by Darkspawn, to live in South Reach, and at this point Cullen's parents die from unknown causes. After the death of King Cullen, a senior enchanter named Alder would start a coup trying to gain freedom from the Circle with many others. With the use of blood magic and demons, they overrun the Circle completely. Knight Commander Gregor would order the tower to be completely sealed before any of them could escape. Unfortunately, many Templars and innocent mages were trapped inside. Cullen was one of them. Cullen and the remaining Templars vowed to slay the attacking mages and protect the innocent ones, so they marched up to where Uldred had taken hold. Here is where the Warden comes in. When you come back to the tower for the Broken Circle quest, up and up you climb, seeing the horrors that the blood mages have wrought onto the tower, until finally you reach a room with a giant pink shield. Inside is a terrified Cullen. Now for the player, even though you are surrounded by bloody corpses, I think it's kind of a little bit too easy to distance yourself from the carnage and what had happened. But Cullen was tortured. If you have Liliana in your party, she will mention how Cullen has been denied food and sleep by those he was captured by. When he confronts a female mage, he talks as if it's not the first time someone went into his mind and used his thoughts and mocked his feelings for her, using her image to torment him. After the Warden is able to convince Cullen that they are indeed real, he is angry and resentful for the mages, wanting them to all be killed. And here's where the Warden can decide if they want to actually do that or not. In the end, Cullen would be the only Templar who was trapped behind the doors to survive. Origins Epilogue. Something I want to touch on here is the questionable canonness of the ending slides in Origins. The previous lead writer of the series, David Gator, has gone on the record of the ending slides being one of his biggest regrets in Dragon Age Origins, as it made it so difficult to continue some stories for the following games in the series. And Cullen's is no exception. Cullen's fate depends on if the mages are given independence or not. If they aren't, Gregor steps down as Knight Commander and the young 20-something Cullen takes over as Knight Commander, which doesn't make any sense, but he supposedly rules the tower with fear. If they are given independence, Cullen becomes paranoid, and then he snaps and kills 3 apprentices. He would then go to prison and later escape and is now on the loose like a madman. But neither of these really fit with what we know of the future. If anything, it seems that BioWare has just very quietly thrown those 2 in the garbage and just created something new. So I think that for most of the Dragon Age epilogue slides, they've become rumors within Ferelden rather than the gospel truth. In World of Thetis Volume 2, it reports that Cullen seemed antagonistic towards both the mages and Templars who were not trapped within, wondering why they wouldn't hear his suggestions for more security. He would leave the tower for some time to work at the Chantry in Greenfell, but did not change his behavior when coming back. Dragon Age 2. Eventually, because of the trauma and the memories associated with Kinlochhold, Cullen jumps at the chance to go anywhere else. Without even sending any word to his family that he had survived the events of the Blight or the Circle, he leaves for Kirkwall. On the trip there, he soon felt uncomfortable in the small spaces below the deck and eventually refused to just go down there at all. He ends up half sleeping on his feet for the entire voyage on the deck. He didn't make many friends in the Kirkwall Circle, keeping mostly to himself. He would eventually room with another Templar by the name of Samson before Samson was kicked out for certain behaviors. If the Warden was a female mage, rumors still exist that he had a crush on the hero of Ferelden, although Meredith would punish anyone repeating them. The rumors seem to make Cullen uncomfortable, although it's unknown if it's because he is ashamed that they fell for a maid or if his feelings were not returned, etc., etc. Meredith would soon take Cullen under her wing. She chooses him for his traumatic past, as I'll get to this eventually, but Meredith also harbors trauma from a mage in her life, and I think she saw herself in Cullen a bit. He would become Knight Captain, the second in command under Knight Commander Meredith, fairly quickly after joining. While Kirkwall slowly succumbs to the friction between the mages and the Templars, for most of the decade that Cullen spends there, it isn't easy on him, but there is room for healing. During the course of the game, at first you see his initial thoughts of mages, how they should be controlled at all times, but you gradually see this develop into him sparing mages, unlike how he wanted to so long ago. A part of this process is likely his family. Cullen's sister Mia, having no word from her brother, eventually was able to track him down, about 2 years after he had come to Kirkwall. Cullen would later explain that he didn't want his sister to see how he had changed after the events at Kinlochhold. For all her reprimands, she wrote to someone who wasn't angry. I wasn't that person anymore. I couldn't be. I wasn't sure I wanted her writing to the man I was then. He would start an uneasy letter correspondence with his family then, with months, sometimes years between letters. The fastest response his family ever got came after a joke from his younger brother, asking him if he should join the Templars. Cullen emphatically replied no. But despite his stubbornness towards talking with his family, Cullen would credit Mia's letters as being the only piece of sanity and comfort during his time in Kirkwall. In his final years there, Cullen began to lose the blind faith he had in Meredith. He noted that he began to see fears in the eyes of the mages he was sworn to protect, a fear that reminded him of his own, and it troubled him. When the chantry eventually exploded, Cullen was suddenly reminded of his own circle and how it fell, and he stayed true with Meredith's plan and command. But eventually, when Knight Commander Meredith attempted to kill the champion of Kirkwall, that's when Cullen realizes that the woman he had been following and the woman who's been trying to help him overcome his trauma has been mad all along. And so he asks for her to step down and let him lead, which thus leads to her death. In the end, depending on your choices, Cullen either lets the champion go or crowns her as Viscount. Cullen would act as Knight Commander in Kirkwall for 2 years, focusing on protecting the loyal mages, reining in the Templars, and just fixing up the city in general. Until a seeker named Cassandra Pentagos, impressed with his integrity, asked if he would like to take part in the Inquisition as the leader of its armies. He then, again, was on a boat, refusing to go below decks. Here, he was approached by Varric Tethras. Kirkwall had disappeared at that point, Varric recalled. I assumed he was ready to leave, and he thought for a moment, then said, all of it. I told him Ferelden might not be better. He said, I was there during a blight in the circle, and then he actually somewhat smiled. Can't be worse. You know, for a first attempt at optimism, it wasn't bad. Dragon Age Inquisition. In the few short years between the ending of Dragon Age 2 and the beginning of Dragon Age Inquisition, Cullen is now the leader of the small Inquisition force, which will later become much larger as the game progresses. After the Battle of Haven, he will let the new Inquisitor know his secret, that he has stopped taking Lyrium and is currently in the process of recovering from his addiction. What's perhaps worse is that the Lyrium was a major coping skill for the trauma of his past. Without that, he's been sleeping less. His time in the Inquisition is mostly positive. He becomes friends with the other advisors, Liliana and Josephine. Josephine asks for his birthday and is confused when he is happy with just shortbread cookies for a present. Liliana ends up giving him a raven with a white feather, in part to stop him from taking birds from time to time, but I also think in an effort to contact his family. He also befriends Cassandra and gives her the task to let him know when he needs to step down due to his lyrium addiction. Liliana and Cullen end up arguing a lot as both have completely opposite ways of dealing with things, but I don't think either really hates the other. If recruited, Cole also attempts to heal Cullen's hurts. A few quotes. They didn't hang you there. You can walk away. Aldred marked you, but didn't make you. You stayed you. The center never changed, kept safe like a coin in your pocket. All seem to point at the same thing. A major part of Cullen's suffering is feeling that he was changed for the worse, and regretting a major part of his life and his views. And here I want to talk about Cullen's trauma. In truth, I just really hate slapping real-world diagnoses on fictional characters for just a wide variety of reasons. But what you see with Cullen is just so similar to what you see with PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder that I think it would almost be insulting not to just lightly touch upon it. If you know what to look for, you can see a lot of symptoms of PTSD in-game and even more so in the World of Thedas books. And here's the thing, a lot of people hate Cullen for his views on mages and how far he let Meredith take her crusade against them. Which is fine, I'm not trying to say that his trauma excuses his actions at all, but I don't think it warrants hate. I think it warrants pity. Cullen was just a boy who had dreamed of helping others and keeping people safe, and he was still just a boy when he was rendered helpless, tortured, and witnessed his closest friends die. This trauma shook him to his core, made him question everything he thought about himself and his ideals, made it hard to continue on. He was then taken in by a woman with similar issues. While she was harsh and he knew it, he also had memories of what he had witnessed. While he had his doubts, Meredith was one of the few people who understood what he had gone through. His loyalty to Meredith wasn't just about the mages, it was about the trauma. Cullen is neither your Disney prince nor the perverted man hunting your precious mages. He's a nuanced character, troubled and tired, honestly just trying to keep true to his childhood dream of helping and protecting others. He had thought for a while that the magic and the Templar Order had perverted who he was, and if you take him off Lyrium, he begins to realize that he is stronger than his past, and who he was is still there. He might have been changed, but he can change back. Anyway, Cullen's story has two major decisions in Inquisition: if you make him go back to taking Lyrium, and if you romance him or not. The Lyrium. There's a couple different choices regarding Cullen and his Lyrium addiction, and the game gives you a lot of chances to change your mind, but it all depends on where Cullen is in Trespasser. If Cullen quits Lyrium by the end of Trespasser, he is doing a lot better. He sends letters to his family still, he reports being happier and healthier. If the Inquisition is disbanded in the end, he goes off with his new dog, who has no name, and finally spends some time with his family. Divine Victoria would also grant him some land to open up a rehab/sanctuary clinic thing for those with Lyrium addiction for former Templars. If the Inquisition is still around, he maintains his position as commander. He would also open up a service to help Templars who want to quit Lyrium or those who are too advanced in Lyrium madness. But if Cullen continues taking Lyrium, he has stopped contacting his family, although Mia still sends a bunch of letters. Josephine even asks if he could just write his sister back once because she's just sending so many. Cullen delves deeper into his addiction and eventually retires. He then disappears and is only found years later by Scout Harding, who heard some rumors. She finds him as a beggar in the streets of Valshaven asking for Lyrium. Harding report that he was in the final stages of Lyrium madness and barely remembered himself or Harding. It's hinted that Harding put him out of his misery, but either way, Cullen is gone. The romance. If romance, Cullen has another weapon against his trauma. While the Inquisitor isn't the reason he will get over his trauma, she does help greatly, supporting him and letting him know that somebody cares. Even Mia will begin to write that he seems happier now in his letters. Safe and solid, protecting and proud, he feels like quiet, stronger when you hold him. Eventually, at the beginning of Trespasser, he will ask her to marry him. You can choose to marry during the Exalted Council, his new dog to witness, or you can just commit to each other, saying that you don't need a ritual to prove your love. In the end, he takes the Inquisitor to meet his family, the first time he has seen them in over a decade, and they are overjoyed to meet their new sister-in-law. Also, fun facts from the Dragon Age Inquisition multiplayer banter, he smells like elderflowers and oak moss, and he does totally style his hair. And that, dear patrons, is all that we know of your Cully Wully. Just some lingering questions, proof that I'm wrong, comments about your own fan theory. Feel free to tweet me at @Gilderthon on Twitter or send a PM to user Gillanon on Reddit. Dara Shiral.